there's never going to be another storm named Matthew because it was so devastating to our state.
I'm not going to leave home.
And I come back here every day. I stop at my mailbox. I point over there. I said, I'll be back.
People in eastern North Carolina are resilient.
I'm Deborah Morgan. Thank you for joining us. The power of water. That was Hurricane Matthew's signature. Crabtree Creek here in Raleigh, so beautiful and scenic today, was an angry, raging river this time last year when Hurricane Matthew came through. It's one of the many tributaries that took all of the rainfall that Matthew brought, sending it downstream, leading to some devastating floods. 28 people died from Hurricane Matthew in North Carolina. More than 2,300 people were rescued from the water. Nearly 90,000 homes were damaged or destroyed. The storm caused $4.8 billion in damage in our state. We have seen so much devastation from hurricanes this year. Harvey, Irma, Maria. The people of eastern North Carolina see those images on the news and they know that feeling all too well because they are still recovering from a disaster of their own. In the next half hour, we are going to share the stories of people rebuilding their lives and their homes. Also, ask the questions, what about towns that were completely underwater? How do they plan to move forward? And is the FEMA money enough to help? Exactly how is North Carolina recovering from Hurricane Matthew? This is Little Rockfish Creek in Hope Mills. On a normal day, doesn't look like much way down that ravine. But when Matthew came through, the water was over the roof of this house. Now look at it. Abandoned, unlivable. Gilbert Bays talks with families still trying to rebuild their lives a year after the storm. FEMA is working with a lot of faith-based organizations to get these homes rebuilt. Organizations like the North Carolina Baptists on Mission. This is Maryland Street in Lumberton. Right now, the Baptists are working on 3 houses just on this street. They've completed 60 in Lumberton so far and have 30 underway being rebuilt right now, but still have 120 to go. Since January, this has been worked on.
That's the bad part of the story.
How many volunteers do you usually have working on a house?
Volunteers run, house this size, we try to keep them at 5 or 6 because there's just not that much room for them to work.
A lot of them have taken their vacation time. They could be making a lot of money. Some of them are professionals at what they're doing, but they're giving that out of love.
What about the volunteers? How do they keep going? How do you keep going?
The book tells us that he provides us with all we need. And we go to bed tired at night, late at night. We wake up ready to go the next morning. And that's where I get my energy.
Can you believe it's been a year since the storm hit and still all this damage?
It's hard to believe. And the bad part is we've had 3 people come in this week, and today's Monday. We had 3 people come by today already.
Still needing help?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you feel about these folks here volunteering to help you?
It's just like angels. It's just like angels. They came to soothe you and also to make you feel like it's going to be all right.
They're saying by this weekend you might be back in.
Ooh, we're going to pray for that one.
Hurricane Matthew damaged 88,000 homes across the state. FEMA approved aid of some sort in half of North Carolina's 100 counties. $97 million has been given out in government assistance to individuals and households. But is it enough? Colin Browder now with that side of the story.
Recovering from the flooding devastation of Matthew takes time, determination, and money.
There's about $391 million in public assistance. Hazard mitigation, $114 million, $102 million, $98 million, $200 million. There's a lot of moving parts here.
State Emergency Management Director Mike Sprayberry helps us track those moving parts. State lawmakers approved $301 million disaster relief dollars for everything from cleanup to infrastructure repairs to housing help. Add in federal money and donations, the state has taken in about $1.5 billion in disaster assistance. It sounds like a lot of money.
So you were right here doing live reports right after the storm, right?
Yes.
What do you remember from that?
that I wouldn't be able to walk where I'm walking right now.
Is that right?
That this whole street was completely underwater. And it was one of those things where apparently the water had come in from the river and then receded, but it didn't take this part with it. You know, the water just sort of sat there like...
We're kind of in a bowl
in
here.
In a bowl,
yeah.
right. And it receded a little bit just during the few hours that we were here, but, you know, not enough for anybody to be able to drive a car down the street or anything like that. So this looks totally different.
We spend a lot of time in the studio. We don't get to get out in it much, especially during a storm.
Right.
But in the aftermath, what was your biggest takeaway after watching everything unfold on TV and then coming out and being here in it?
You know, you may remember this, Deb. I think it was Tuesday night after the storm that I turned to you and David, if I'm remembering correctly, right at the end of the newscast and said, I want to go down there because I feel like I'm almost faking concern for the people down there, and I don't really understand what they're going through.
Yeah.
And so I felt like I had to come down here to see it firsthand and to talk to folks that were being affected by it, so that then I could really, you know, say with sincerity, you know, now I have an understanding as to how bad it is, and now I can react to it, you know, in a very, very honest and sincere way. And I talked to a woman sitting in a car. Her husband had walked through the water into the neighborhood to find out that their house had been condemned. I don't know if that was permanent condemnation or just for that, you know, for that time. But she had more positivity to her than probably I had had in the past month. In just the 10 minutes that I talked to her, she was convinced that even though they had been in that house 35 years and they may never go back, that something good was going to come out of this. Her faith was strong, and I was just so impressed by the fact that, you know, they're in this terrible situation, like maybe the worst of their lives, and they still got a smile on their face.
You know, we're standing here a year later after Matthew. What hits you when you look around and look at the recovery that still needs to happen?
At first glance, when I look up and down the street, obviously it looks much better than it did when I was here. But it's like, I'm sure what happens is when you go into individual houses and talk to people, then you start finding out the real story, that looks can be deceiving. You know, you think it looks normal, Greg, but let me tell you, you know, we still have a long way to go.
Yeah. There's one woman who said she just put up a blanket up because she wanted to be able to stay in her bedroom, but there was mold on the other side, and she was hoping that the blanket would at least just keep her safe from that. So there are still parts of homes, to your point, that are livable, but parts that are still just in ruin.
It does make you wonder, and this is not a criticism of anybody, but it's like, is there a way that we can focus more energy and attention on these types of things so that it doesn't drag out so long? And I don't know what the answer to that is, but it sure seems like it's worth looking into because people have been suffering a long time. You know, it's just doesn't seem fair.
And beyond the physical scars are the emotional ones. The anxiety that people here in eastern North Carolina feel every time a tropical system forms out in the Atlantic. Will the river rise again? Will the floodwaters come? Can we survive another storm? People here are very resilient, but they're also very much in recovery from Hurricane Matthew, and they don't want to be forgotten. We have much more on WRAL.com, including resources on how you can still get help to recover from Hurricane Matthew, or how you might want to volunteer for the recovery efforts. I'm Deborah Morgan. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
I'm not going to heaven because I'm good. I'm not going to heaven because I've preached to a lot of people. I'm going to heaven because of God's grace and mercy in Christ at the cross.
Man cannot be saved by earning his way, by working his way, but by grace that ye saved, through faith, and that not of yourselves.
Billy Graham's message, born here in North Carolina and preached around the world. He helped break barriers of politics and of race.
Christianity is not a white man's religion, and don't let anybody ever tell you that it's white or black.
One message for world leaders and the common man alike.
If you call upon him, he will forgive. If you repent, he will forgive.
A voice now silenced. Tonight, we remember Billy Graham, America's evangelist.
Many would say America's loss is heaven's gain. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Gerald Owens. Welcome to this special presentation of the life of Billy Graham.
And I'm Deborah Morgan. Billy Graham traveled the world, preaching one message for decades, a message born and nurtured in the mountains of North Carolina. WRAL has followed Graham and his family closely over the years. It gives us a special insight into the man and the message, one we want to share with you tonight.
Over the next half hour, we will look at the legacy Billy Graham leaves behind, both with his ministry and in the lives of the millions of people he touched. Bill Leslie and Ken Smith join us live from the Billy Graham Library in Charlotte. Brian Mims is also live near Graham's home in Montreat. And you will hear stories from 3 of his children who share memories no one else has. Memories of the preacher, the role model, and the dad. We begin tonight with a man who has covered Billy Graham for WRAL for decades.
Bill Leslie traveled to the Graham Library in Charlotte as soon as he heard this news. He joined us there live tonight. Bill?
Yeah, Deborah and Gerald, thank you very much. Billy Graham's preference was to be a simple country preacher. His calling, however, was something totally different, much larger in scope.
We will not be silent.
You could say this was preaching to the choir, educators taking to the podium to spread their message amongst themselves. Right now on WRAL, team coverage of the education rally in Raleigh. Every teacher in that sea of red has a story and a life outside the classroom. We'll share some of those with you in the next 90 minutes. And state lawmakers are back in town and the session is underway. Was the teacher's message heard? It's all part of our team coverage. And another story we've been tracking. Could Apple be close to bringing thousands of jobs to the Triangle? What we've learned in just the last few hours coming up.
Focused on people and community. This is WRAL News.
A day of demonstrations are wrapping up here in downtown Raleigh. Thousands of educators, students, and supporters spent the day telling their stories to anyone who would listen. Thank you for joining. I'm Deborah Morgan.
And I'm David Crabtree. And when we say thousands of teachers showed up for this event, we are not exaggerating.
Sky 5 flew over the crowd at 11:45 this morning. Organizers say this sea of red, plus those inside the legislative building, totals more than 20,000 people. We've had our own crews in the crowd since the march began, listening to people's stories and documenting them for you on air and online. We were inside the legislative building for the start of the new session and outside as lawmakers heard from teachers at a late afternoon rally.
Team coverage continues now with Brad Johansson, who's been in the middle of this all day.
Brad joins us now live. Brad?
Guys, you never really know what you're going to get on something like this. You can get estimates. You can tell people that they have worked something out, that they know what they're going to get. As a matter of fact, we were working on estimates of maybe 15,000 people today. You get 20,000 plus. And it was an impressive, historic rally for the people here. As you take a look at this rally this afternoon, there were people who had stayed around all day, not who had just come in for the morning and gone by. They had come back and worked to present a rally that would start at 3:30 this afternoon. A dais filled with 17 speakers. It went from legislators to parents to students. And one of the teachers came from Northampton County, a rural county that would like someone to pay attention to their needs in the classroom.
Today, I rally for the resources to help students be successful in every community. Every North Carolina public school student from the mountains to the coast has a right to receive a quality public education, and that can only happen with adequate and equitable resources.
The question is, how long before you get adequate and equitable resources? As the legislature responds with 4 years of pay raises we've given you, looking for a 5th year of pay raises, but still not close to a national average. Every teacher here that I spoke with today, that many of our reporters spoke with today, has a very personal story. Personal stories about their struggles in the classroom, and very personal stories about their passion that they bring to the art of teaching. Brian Mims followed one all day long. He joins us now live a little bit further down on Bicentennial Plaza. Brian?
Brad, whether you're a 25-year veteran or a beginning teacher, it's pretty heady stuff, lending your voice and your energy and your sweat, and in some cases, your tears to a movement of this scale. The young woman you're about to meet, for her, being here today was not optional. It was an obligation. Miss Lavender and her group made it to Senator Brent Jackson's office. He's a senator from Johnston County. She was not able to meet face to face with him, but she did leave her card with one of his staffers. She told me any state senator and state representative is welcome in her classroom at any time to see what life is like for a first grade teacher in North Carolina, Brad.
Well, for those who are up for election, we'll see how many of those take her up on that offer. Brian Mims, thank you very much. The rally is over. The silence just behind us. They ended with "It's a Beautiful Day" from U2. An hour and a half of the rally, 17 speakers. And it ends the day in the legislative building as well. I don't know whether it was more calm in there than it was out here, but Laura Leslie was inside. She brings us more. Laura?
Brad, you know, I think it was a little bit more calm than it was in there for the most part, but I think their message came across loud and clear to the legislators here in the building for opening day today. A lot of the lawmakers I talked to from both parties told me they were surprised by the size of the rally and by the general civility of the overall day. There was a little bit of shouting here and there, but overall lawmakers were able to complete their opening sessions without a problem. Both Senate Leader Phil Berger and House Speaker Tim Moore emphasized that they've given teachers an average raise of $8,600 over the past 5 years. But teachers counter that their average pay is still nearly $10,000 below the national average. Other teachers tell us it's not just about teacher pay. They're asking for more education funding overall, from teaching assistants to textbooks. Adjusted for inflation, today's per pupil spending is lower than it was 10 years ago in 2008. I asked both Berger and Moore yesterday whether they have a goal to get to the national average. Neither of them said yes. Back to you.
Laura, thank you so much. It is a personal story for so many people here today, and I will tell you that it's a personal story for me. I'm rather new to your area. This is a historical moment for the teachers who are spending their time to try and change things. Full disclosure, I'm married to a teacher. I have 2 children left in school. 2 are already out and moving to a North Carolina system that's still trying to figure out education the way they want it to be. Sarah Kruger followed one teacher through the day. She will have a very personal story coming for you at 6 o'clock. We are live on Bicentennial Plaza. David, Deborah, I'll send it back to you for now.
Yeah, and Brad, I was going to bring up the fact that you are new. You are married to a teacher.
Brad Johansson, live in Raleigh. Thank you, Brad. We'll see you again at 6. Now, you've heard a lot from us today, story after story from teachers themselves, not their representatives. People such as this teacher Jeff Hogan and Lena Tillett spoke to during our coverage this morning.
This hits home, this sign that we're looking at right here. Take me through that time last year.
Okay, last year I was pregnant, got diagnosed with cancer. It was a really hard time in my life, but my job is to educate children, so I showed up. That's all I can really say. It's what I'm supposed to do. And I'm upset because we were questioned our loyalty for why we would take a day today. And I didn't take a day after chemo, so I don't really think you can say that I'm not loyal to my classroom, my students, my team, the state. Stop saying it, please.
You can hear more of these stories on our social media sites. WRL's Casey Cunningham has been sharing photos and videos to our Facebook and Instagram pages today that you will only find there. You can also catch up on all of our coverage on WRL.com.